Hello,
Uh,
how are you?
am I in the frame?
A little bit, maybe. Yeah, perfect, perfect.
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. You look beautiful in the greenery, in the
You
nature.
know, I'm so determined on doing this outside.
Mhm,
Uh,
mhm.
so I'm hoping that the neighbors behave.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed they will appreciate the energy, feel the energy we're putting out today.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, if we just gonna wait a few more minutes
Of
just to
course,
let
no
everybody
problem.
join us. But just wanted to have a little chat while we wait about how you're
Uh-huh.
dealing with lockdown. Where are you right now?
Right now, I am quarantined with my family. So,
Hmm.
my mom, my stepdad, and my little sister.
Okay.
And it's had its ups and downs, as
Hmm.
everybody else has agreed.
Yeah.
Um, but all in all, just I'm enjoying the pace of life. I
Hmm.
must say
Hmm.
I'm really enjoying this pace. It feels more normal. You know, when people say,
Hmm.
"Well, let's go back to the new normal is hectic."
Has to be
Um,
different from the old normal.
it has to be different to the old normal.
Hmm.
So I'm really enjoying just the sort of this contemplative time that we have
Hmm.
right now, and yeah, like this is what I was talking about. I think
Yeah.
it might end,
So
but
well.
we'll hope that it'll all go well. Um, but yes, how about yourself?
So I'm quarantined with my mum.
Hmm.
Um, that's yeah, up and down. But
Absolutely.
it's I don't want to say that it's been like better, um,
Mm,
but there's been like moments to do some serious reflection
mm,
and to like rethink like routine, rethink like all the things that we do in our daily lives and why we
absolutely.
actually do them. And I saw something today as well that was kind of talking about this is like a time to think about what we do have control over and what we do
Hmm.
have agency over.
Absolutely.
Because the things that we think we've lost now, we actually never had control over in the first place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So that's what I've been trying to do. Is kind of,
Mm.
but also I think everyone should be kind of very mindful that we are living in unprecedented times. And
We
so
never had control in the first place.
right,
We had
we
the
are
illusion of control, but we never had
exactly,
control.
exactly, never.
So,
And yeah, taking time and space to process that is
yeah,
needed.
yeah, yeah.
Like let alone all the actual like the fear and the
Mm.
confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Is just the like time to process what is actually going on.
Yeah,
What day is it? What
yeah,
like how many weeks have you been at this?
yeah,
What is the plan here? No one's really
yeah,
giving us that information.
yeah.
Um,
And where is this fear coming from?
yeah.
Who are the those who are pushing this fear? To what ends? To
Hmm.
what
Hmm.
purpose? And that I think is very important for people to pay attention as to what ends is this fear being used
Hmm.
against us,
Definitely.
because it's certainly not for us. Yeah.
No.
Mm.
No.
And
Um,
seeking truth, I think seeking the right information, making sure
hmm.
we are informed and we have the right sources speaking into our lives
Hmm.
has been
Hmm.
key in this situation because there's
Yeah.
so much misinformation moving
Hmm.
around, that
Intentionally.
it you realize the how scarce the truth is.
Hmm.
It
Yeah.
sounds
I think
crazy.
it's so scary because we're not taught uh, the tools to kind of decipher the correct information. It's assumed there's a level of like
Or assumption that what reaches us is the
yeah,
truth.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And also there's a level of like comprehension, ability to comprehend what's going on, because
Mm.
people like to use terms that don't make much sense to lay people.
Yeah, just to
So
confuse
we're
you.
like, well,
Yeah.
what does this equation mean? I don't know what this means. Can I leave my house? Can I go to
Mm.
work?
Mm.
Like, are my grandparents safe? Like, you know, like all these
Mm-hmm.
kind of questions.
Mm.
Um, okay, so I think we
You ready
should
to go?
get into it. So I'm just gonna.
Sounds
Hey
good.
everyone, thank you for joining. It's Women
Hello.
Cultural System and Vegan. I'm Saf, aka System, and we are here to talk about so many things, but primarily African ancestral healing, different ways of looking at wellness,
Mm.
navigating the wellness industry as a Black woman. which I really want to get into with you. And just kind of talking about, obviously, about the complexion company, what you guys do, how it came to be, and then your experience with veganism, plant-based way of life, and holistic way of life.
Yeah.
So that, very quickly, summary of what we're doing today. But I'm going to let you introduce yourself, because I feel like I prefer it when the person introduces themselves. Although it's nice to hear how you, but yeah.
No, of course.
Welcome.
Thank you, Safia. Thank you. I'm really happy to join you. This is our company's first live, so to have a host such as yourself is really an honor. So thank you for sharing your platform with me.
Of course.
So I'm Nomshado, and I'm the founder of a complexion company. And what we are is an eco-luxury African wellness and clean beauty organization. We're here to provide solutions for women of color. So what is going to be coming from us is going to be very solution based, cutting across categories, ensuring that everything that we make is engineered around the woman of color. We are sort of great believers of epigenetics, and what epigenetics is how your DNA is affected by your environment. So as diasporans or as immigrants, we have moved out of our native homes into these new environments. This has caused our DNA to either be expressed or suppressed as a result of being in these new environments. So that's at that sort of DNA level that change is happening within our bodies. There's also the spiritual and emotional wellness aspect of things. Back when we had I guess, a village or a tribal hierarchy, there would be somebody who was responsible for our spirituality and ensuring that that spirituality is integrated into life, hence creating holistic living. So because we're now outside of those environments, what tends to happen is that our spirituality is fragmented, it's compartmentalized, we don't understand it, we connect to it in sort of perverted ways, in a way. And what we're trying to do is create a blueprint for what the African wellness looks like outside of native and tribal environments. So it's taking the lessons that we have learned from our elders and our ancestors and putting it into a modern context, because they never worked in offices, they never had to deal with startups, they never had to do all of this bureaucracy, they didn't have to deal with microaggressions, they didn't have to deal with all of these things. But how do you take the lessons of wellness and wholeness outside of the villages and bring it into whichever environment you choose to dwell in?
That's amazing. I think so necessary and needed. And I'm wondering, kind of, what was your motivation for starting this company, or developing this company, or even just kind of getting interested in this type of wellness to begin with? Because it's obviously it's a lot. It's information that's not easy to find, which is why I do what I do, to kind of make that more accessible, and kind of make pre-colonial ancestral birthright healing practices accessible and available to everybody, and also kind of intellectually understandable or translated into kind of 2020 and what our lives look like now. So how did you? I've read a bit about it, but I'll let you tell everybody how you kind of got into these things. Yeah,
I think when I came to the UK, my formative years were already behind me. A lot of what I was going to use, I read a lot on psychology, and it says from the ages of 0 to 7, 80% of your personality is already made. So you are not really going to sort of go on a tangent far from what you have learned during that time. And for me, during that time, I was under the guardianship of my grandmother. And she would take me everywhere with her. And we were so well together all of the time, because she was even my teacher. So because she was a teacher in charge at my school. So I would go to her school. So every day I spent with her. I spent time with her at home, time with her at school, time with her going to sort of service in the church that she was at. So I learned a lot just through being around her presence. So when I came to the UK, a lot of things changed for me. First, I was now in an environment where I was not used to being I was no longer a majority.
Mm-hmm.
That was the biggest mind spin,
Yeah.
that hold on, there's hardly any of me around. And I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't used to seeing people in charge who looked like me, and
Mm-hmm.
and the whole system was sort of turned on its head. But what was instilled in me kept fighting against what I kept seeing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember at school there was a somebody who was just trying to be racist, but it just didn't work because I was I just badmouthed them back. And cause I speak another language, I've got a mother
Mm-hmm.
tongue, so I'll just cuss you back in my language, and that completely confused them.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
So,
There is some really interesting research into the
so that's,
differences between
yeah.
continental Africans and then
Mm.
Africans with diaspora who are born
Yeah,
here,
because you
and
just
their
kiss your teeth
experiences.
at them and
Hmm,
think,
exactly.
who do you think you are?
It's not foundational identity for you guys.
No, no, it
Yeah, yeah,
isn't. We're
yeah. Mm-hmm.
not sort of, we had to deal with our old colonialism and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. But to we have such a sense of self, and that sense of self is rooted down our bloodlines, knowing that we come from a place, there's a
Mm-hmm.
location on the map where I can say,
Mm-hmm.
these are my people. I can walk
Mm-hmm.
in, they can embrace me, and we can talk,
Mm-hmm.
and we share the same language, we share the same values. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a very concrete foundation that we have walking
Yeah.
into situations where we may not be the minority. So if
Mm-hmm.
somebody tries it, we just kind of look at them like, what's your problem?
Mm-hmm.
But I wrestled with that for a lot during my teen and my
Mm-hmm.
20s, and I felt very protective over what I had learned, but I found it really difficult. When I walked out of the door, I was European, but when I came back home, I was very African.
Mm-hmm.
So it was confusing to figure out how to integrate those two things. I
Mm-hmm.
remember because I used to be a PA at Ralph Lauren, and I used to work and move around Mayfair.
Mm-hmm.
And I refused to wear my hair in braids, and I refused to wear trainers. There was nothing I could do with my race, but I just knew that if I did that, that would typecast me in a certain type of way in which I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
And that really didn't settle with me at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like a closeted African. And I was like, I have to come out at
Mm-hmm.
some point.
The pressure of assimilation is heavy.
The pressure of assimilation is so heavy
Yeah.
because, as anybody who's perceptive, it was
Mm-hmm.
clear to me that in order to progress in any line
Mm-hmm.
of work, you must assimilate. Because
Mm-hmm.
even in a work environment where there may be two or three of you, it is the one who assimilates more and
Mm-hmm.
better who moves ahead and who gets the promotion. So the
By
subliminal
our own.
language was
Mm,
always there that you
yeah.
must conform or fall back,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so I then started. I knew I wanted to have my own business, and I knew I wanted to integrate these sides of me, and
Mm-hmm.
and it was with a lot of effort that I started to um, go into the beauty industry, which I'd always loved, and I would always spend my time in the beauty
Mm-hmm.
halls, purchasing, trying, spraying,
Mm-hmm.
moisturizing, and I just, again, it was one of those spaces which, although I enjoyed it, it never really felt welcoming for
Mm-hmm.
somebody like me. I could enjoy it from sort of outside of the window, but I wasn't really
Mm-hmm.
invited into the party.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go into beauty, but I wanted to go into beauty in the most authentic way. And
Mm-hmm.
I kept seeing inclusivity, diversity, all of that marketing, and I
Mm-hmm.
just wasn't buying it. I just
Mm-hmm.
thought, what's this nonsense that we're being sold and we're supposed to be happy?
Mm-hmm.
Um, sorry, let me get comfortable. And and also knowing the product formulation process, it
Mm-hmm.
just didn't make sense why a product which was originally designed and made for a person of European descent
Mm-hmm.
was now at the very last stage being changed in color for a
Mm-hmm.
woman like me. That to me, it didn't speak innovation. That to me
Mm-hmm.
spoke, capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
It's like opportunism, you know.
It's placating
Um,
us so that we don't,
Nothing
yeah.
really was designed for me except
Mm-hmm.
for maybe some skincare where it didn't really have any affiliation with race.
Mm-hmm.
But that I found extremely frustrating. So as I
Mm-hmm.
was building this company, I wanted to make sure that it came from an authentic space. And through developing those products and reading and understanding and formulating, I was able to embark on my own journey
Mm-hmm.
of wellness and wholeness. So that is probably where the inspiration came from. I wanted a solution for myself, and to this day, there's so many problems which I'm trying to remedy myself, which
Mm-hmm.
I know echo wide with the diaspora, where
Mm-hmm.
women are, they're tired of this tokenism that tends
Mm-hmm.
to happen when it comes to marketing product towards us.
Yeah.
There's no real solutions. It's all very temporary patches being made, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not a concrete and a real solution being
Mm-hmm.
understood by a person of color, created by a person of color, and
Mm-hmm.
marketed towards us in an authentic way. Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes some of the aspirations they show on us show a real lack of understanding of how dynamic and diverse we are as women.
Yes.
Mm.
There's always there's space for one one black
There's always space for one.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah. One specific type.
Mm.
You've given us so much. I want to go back to what two things. One, you mentioned your grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that like one of the key things that we need as a diaspora is more kind of cultivating more intergenerational conversation, because we're losing so much of our history and so much oral tradition and so much
Mm.
just of our past that
Mm.
we already have a limited access to,
Yeah.
and I was just kind of wondering if like you could see kind of beauty as being a way of doing that. So like I always think about beauty practices being passed down through like mothers to daughters, and kind of how to there's a lot of like healing that needs to be done to kind of set those
And
relationships.
healing through those conversations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted to talk to you about you mentioned in pre-colonial Africa, in a tribal hierarchy, there was a person whose job it was to look after the spiritual well-being of the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we? That's necessary now. It's needed now,
Much, very much so.
and like even more so because we are a diaspora,
Mm.
and away from kind of our natural,
Mm.
like the earth is healing and we're away from that.
Mm.
Um, like what does that look like in 2020? What is
Mm.
the modern medicine man, I guess.
The modern
Uh,
medicine man. I think those who are, oh, I think even down to sort of the native understanding, there's an awakening. So those who are conscious and who have a desire, and there's a pull in your psyche, in your spirit, in your
mhm,
energy to
mhm,
gravitate towards those
mhm,
things, they are the ones called to be the Nyangas. And
mhm.
Nyanga is a traditional healer. In my culture, in Zulu culture, there's two different types. There's Nyanga and Sangoma.
Okay.
Sangoma is the spiritual guardian, the one who communicates with the ancestors.
Mhm,
And there's such beauty in the name because Sangoma is the one who sings the songs of our ancestors, the
mhm,
ones who commune with spiritual energies. The
mhm.
Nyanga is the botanist, is the one who understands nature, the healer,
Mhm, mhm,
the one who
mhm,
uses nature to heal the community. And
mhm,
in some cases, a Sangoma and a Nyanga may be the same. But the duties of both is to look after the health of the community, and they
mhm,
do not work independently. They actually work interdependently because
mhm,
there is an understanding that your physical health is your spiritual health, your spiritual
mhm,
wealth is your physical wealth. They're
mhm.
interconnected.
Yeah.
So, in terms of those who want to, where is there space for that today? There's a
Mhm,
lot. that is available to people. Like for example, there are some herbalists, and homeopathy I find a very accessible way to embark on that journey, just because it's so readily available. I go to Neil's Yard because they have a lot of roots and herbs and tinctures and teas that they can make for you in order to remedy whatever's wrong with you. I usually go in there and say, I'm tired, or I'm anxious, or I need something to help me calm down, something to help me sleep. And they can readily make a tea, a tincture, or recommend some essential oils or something that I can use at home to calm myself down or to reach my desired state. When it comes to the community at large, I still believe it as somewhat the responsibility of the individual. It's in having that dialogue, having that honest dialogue with those around you. There is, when people ask, like, how do I find out more about my culture and my specific tribal routines and ways of self-healing, go down your family line and have those conversations, because as you mentioned, it's even in those conversations that healing occurs. Because there's some in especially colored communities, we do not tend to have this honest and open dialogue because of the hierarchy of parent child. It never meets at sort of level of respect. It never meets there. But it is important as the awakened ones and as the ones who are at the front. It's your duty. You're at the front line of your bloodline. So whatsoever is coming from you at this point is your responsibility. And that to me is what sort of keeps me awake at night and keeps me working and keeps me moving forward. Knowing that, I am the matriarch for my bloodline. Although my bloodline is not formed yet, it sits with me because I'm the last awakened one. So it is getting as much information to help you in that in that role and in that responsibility. And that is through the conversations, going back to your home countries, to your home villages, repairing those relationships and sitting at the feet of these people and saying, tell me about myself. Because there's many an African proverb that talks about a tree that has strong roots can withstand any weather. And if you do not have strong roots, this modern world around here, this EU, this Brexit, will finish you. Because there's so much of identity politics and people standing on identities which have no roots. Go to your roots and you'll be able to then flourish and grow and create this blueprint of what it is to be a modern individual with your specific genetics. Because your children, I already see it now, children who are losing their tongue. I'm the last of my mother to speak our tongue, but I will pass it on to my children because you have no choice. You have to, you have to speak our tongue. But it's in those, it's passing those things on, passing on what you have, because you can't pass on what you don't have. So first, building it within yourself that's key and primary into ensuring that these things survive the test of time.
So a few things that you said. Firstly, I love the distinction your culture makes between someone who speaks the ancestors and someone who works with the earth. I think that lots of people think they need to do both.
No, don't.
Find their way into those both. Either of those things obstructed because of not knowing at once only one or the other. And I think that in the West there is a massive separation between our bodies and our minds as well as our spirit. And I think part of that has to do with kind of the secularization of our society in the West, but also kind of the campaign to kind of misrepresent and undermine our
Absolutely.
our cultures.
African
And
spirituality,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of kind of when you said that we have to sit at the feet of our elders, I believe that I'm a diaspora, true diaspora. So my mum's African American, but dad's mixed Jamaican English. So when you think about going home, that's difficult for me, right? But I was thinking about, you know, sitting at the feet of my elders, and that's that, like reading, and learning, and there's a level of humility and shedding of our like Western like knowledge.
Indoctrinated.
Yeah,
A lot of the time.
Right,
You're
exactly.
indoctrinated.
And also I think there's a level of like there's this superiority. I don't think it's conscious. But I think, you
That
know,
West is best.
yeah. So
Yeah.
we had that with COVID. You know, we're getting the stats that Black people are 4 times more likely to die from COVID, and people are blaming black people or blaming genetics rather than kind of the
systems that exist against them.
Right. I think this is this a really important time for Black people to return to those kind of practices and learning about them. So you have people who have said, I think it was in New York, a Jamaican guy was like, yeah, I had COVID, but then I drank like ginger bush tea and I was fine in 2 weeks. I have friends who thought that they haven't converted, but they thought they got it, and then went on a strict alkaline diet for 2 weeks and just kind of doing like plant-based whole foods, and that's all kind of, those are all drawing from our birthright, right? And I think like this is a really important time for Black people to kind of reassess their understanding. Yeah, it's right. Like address the sources, and kind of figure out. I think it's really like there are so many people, particularly like that I've engaged with in London, who are doing incredible things. You mentioned a herbalist, so I use Natuli Botanica, and I also follow someone called Paul Otote. Everyone who is watching us, look up Dungo's book or Paul Otote, and he has a complete herb guide list.
Wow.
Yeah, he has a complete guide list, and he has also got a nutrient guide for vegan, and he has like a bodybuilder's guide for vegan. He's awesome, Black guy. And so when I got your amazing product,
thank you.
with the beautiful packaging, I was like, oh my god,
thank you.
You know, it looks like what are they called? Like you go to a botanica and it's like it's luxury African wellness.
Yeah.
There's something about it that is has the boldness of like Africa, but like it's very simple. It's very like yeah. But so in here, so it has moringa. This is moringa powder.
Yeah.
And he says his auntie has a moringa tree in her back garden in Nigeria. And that's so common for so many people back home, that they have access to these things, not just in powder form, not just from Amazon, but actually back home. So every time she comes, she brings him a bag full. So it's packed full of vitamins A, C, E, calcium, potassium, amino acids. It's been used for generations to treat and prevent diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, anemia, arthritis, liver disease, respiratory, skin, and digestive disorders. It can fight oxidative stress, help and keep the skin look young. And additionally, it improves brain function and normalizes neurotransmitters that play a role in mood and memory. So that's all those things in one little thing. And half of those things there, Black people are disproportionately affected by in this country because of medical racism.
Right. No longer living in our native countries.
Right, exactly.
And what was I going to add? Sort of to that point, the deception also that the West sells you is that complication is better. So a more complex, complicated, you know, a more value added product is going to do more for you. Yeah. And that's a complete lie. Mother Nature came with its own remedies and its own mode of sophistication. And I believe that simplicity is the ultimate of sophistication. When you reduce it down to nature, it provides you what it's supposed to provide to you. Because in just 5 grams of that powder, you are having 100 grams of
Mm-hmm.
what would be raw moringa
Mm-hmm.
oleifera leaves.
Yeah.
So there's this whole overcomplication, and is that whole creates confusion, creates fear,
Mm-hmm.
that in which you're able to dominate and become profitable in this space.
Mm-hmm.
When a lot of these ingredients, you will see, I find it also quite interesting that it's Africans which are penalized for looking towards our own remedies. The
Mm-hmm.
Chinese are celebrated,
Mm-hmm.
Chinese medicine. There's a
Mm-hmm.
store.
Yeah.
There's always access to Chinese medicine
Mm-hmm.
nearby.
Mm-hmm.
And Indian medicine, that's also Ayurvedic medicine, that's
Mm-hmm.
also practiced openly, and
Mm-hmm.
people love it. But
Mm-hmm.
African spirituality, African medicine,
It's
for
been
some
so
reason,
demonized.
it's
Yeah.
not sophisticated. It's not
Yeah.
going to work. It's
Mm-hmm.
even our own people shun it, and
Mm-hmm.
they want something that comes out of a drugstore. When
Mm-hmm.
for many years, for centuries, we have been going to our own gardens for healing,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the lie that is being sold to us,
Yeah.
and that is what we buy into a lot
It
of the
goes
time.
back to the what we were saying before about the lack of our inability to kind of be discerning about what we intake, the media that we intake, because I think there is
Absolutely.
a lot of misinformation when it comes
Mm.
to holistic health. There's
Mm.
lots of it's not regulated. A lot of the courses and stuff, so people when they're
Mm.
learning, but when you learn these things, it's very intuitive. It's very kind of
Mm-hmm.
there's not really a formal guiding or formal kind of curriculum.
Mm.
And so that means that like the results or the not the results, but the advice will vary.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why lots of people have or take issue with the idea of holistic health, particularly
Mm-hmm.
African holistic health,
Yeah.
because we have a culture where results and qualifications are more important than actual knowledge or wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think.
And imagine a nation which could heal itself, how
Mhm.
dangerous that could be.
Oh yeah, completely. It's the same
Yeah.
way, it is a form of language. Working with the earth is a form of language, I think.
Yeah.
And it's the same way as they didn't let us read. They've
Mm-hmm.
taken away our connection to the earth, cutting off, us from our mother, which is earth,
Yeah.
and in such a blatant way. But they do it, because it's done through indoctrination, and we don't even see that. We agree. So I think,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so much
And
of
it's
my
in
life.
language. It's
Yeah.
in so much in language. I was reading just doing a bit of research about I can't remember what now, but it was
Mm-hmm.
talking about witches and sorcerers. I
Mm-hmm.
just thought, in our language we have no such thing.
Mm-hmm.
You are either a Nyanga or you are a
Mm-hmm.
Sangoma. Who's
Mm-hmm.
a witch and who's a sorcerer?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
We
it's
have
I call it journalistic violence. There's a
mm,
lot of that in
mhm,
in what we read in Wikipedia, in all of these sources,
mhm,
because the people who have our languages are spoken languages. They were never really
mhm,
meant to be written. So
mhm.
therefore, translation is quite fluid. And we
Yeah.
speak of those things which aren't sort of scientific and solid. We speak of the
Mhm,
things of nature, the things which are, it's like a romantic language. It's probably closer
mhm,
to Latin,
mhm.
our languages, because
Okay.
they speak of things you can't quite touch,
Mhm,
and make into sort of solid fact. So when I see a lot of this of these records, they're not always recorded by Africans. So the
mhm,
translation is taken and
mhm.
indoctrinated, and you
Yeah.
use a violent language to describe my ancestors, to
Yeah.
describe my religion, to describe my past and my heritage. And you
Mhm,
have to be very discerning about those things, because I do
mhm,
call it, and I see it a lot more now during COVID, sort of this journalistic violence where
mhm.
language is being weaponized, and they know very well what they're saying and
Yeah.
the words that they're using, and it is
Mhm,
used to demean. It's
mhm,
used to destroy the credibility of. It's
mhm,
used to put under
mhm.
anything that wants to elevate itself above the Western knowledge that we have today.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. It's actually scary how kind of like I said before, we have no capacity as a community to kind of navigate through these different ideas, because we're constantly being told different things.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is about who shouts the loudest, or about
Oh yeah.
who who has the, I don't know. So we have Nipsey Hussle being an avid supporter of Dr. Sebi, and that's the only motivator for people to get into holistic medicine, is because the celebrity was involved, not because of like going back to ancestral healing practices, because oh my God, like this has been around for a long time, and I have my own issues with Dr. Sebi. I think there's a lot of I guess before misinformation. Back? Hello? You back?
Yes.
Yeah. I hate, yeah. How many times through lockdown have you, hello? You paused. So yeah, I think what is really beautiful to see is that there are lots of people who have taken who've combined the two, who've combined like the things that we deem necessary, so things like peer research, things like empirical evidence, things like all these different things that have traditionally been quite difficult to do. They're kind of doing that kind of research and producing things like this book of herbs, which you would never be able to find 10 years ago. Producing things like YouTube videos that have links to things that I think that we have. There's like just culturally lots of skepticism when it comes to most things, and so I think that what we're doing is I think people who are kind of returning to this ancestral wisdom is like thinking, okay, well, what are my questions with it? What are my problems with it? And how do I
overcome them?
Yeah, and like how do I make it clear that I've thought about them?
Yeah, I'll say one of the things. Sorry to cut yourself here. I just wanted to interject with this because a lot, especially in sort of Black churches and sort of Black spirituality as a whole, what tends to happen is, the question of, are you delving in witchcraft? Because that's what the missionaries achieved, right? They said, leave your religion, it's witchcraft. What is witchcraft? Anyway, they demonized what was ours. And gave us what was theirs, and we took on what was theirs as though it was ours now, so that we now will defend something that is foreign against something that is known and has been tested. But I remember sort of talking back to I have my living grandmother, and sort of and saying that these are my ancestors. And according to our religion, our ancestors, they cannot hurt me. They can never do me harm. How can what is mine hurt me? Because I am interconnected, I'm interlinked with my ancestors. If they hurt me, they hurt themselves because I carry their blood. I am their bloodline. So that to me is one of the ways in which anybody who has sort of the questions of, oh, is this a bit woo-woo,
Yes, a bit woo-woo.
A bit woo-woo. Should I? These are not foreign spirits. This is not what we deal with. Because a foreign spirit can harm you and proceed with caution. But your ancestors can never do you no harm. Never. And I think that, ancestral, I was saying this the other week and I thought, maybe I shouldn't shake this table.
Hit the table, girl.
I was talking about, people think that ancestral worship is arcane. It doesn't work, it's impossible. I was like, what you don't see is that it's sophisticated now. We call it museums, we call it memorials, we call it heritage, and you think that these people do not worship their ancestors. There's a statue erected for anybody and every person scattered across the country, and you want to tell me not to worship, not to venerate with mine? They've got a sophisticated ancestor worship, but do not tell me that it doesn't exist, because it is alive and well. You're going to work and you're walking past the statue. Whose ancestors is that? Is that yours?
Even the park benches. Even the blood,
Is
you can't
monument.
rest without thinking about somebody's spirit, you know.
Mm.
I think that's such
Something
a
has been erected in their honor, and you want to
yeah,
tell me that
mm-hmm.
it's
Such a
arcane.
brilliant point.
You know, Africans
Yeah,
shouldn't be doing that. Europeans are doing it over
mm-hmm.
and over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with it. They know the strength of having
Mm-hmm.
their ancestors on their side. Why do you think their nations are
Mm-hmm.
prospering? Hmm?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think I mean that's why that was where the violence was directed. You know, that, at us losing that those
Connection.
connections.
Mm.
I think it's really important that everyone understands that they're not lost forever.
No,
Um,
you carry them.
yeah.
That's why I said the song. One thing I love about the name Sangoma, the one who sings the ancestral songs, is that it is a song which has been sung from long ago, and that's what you
Mm-hmm.
are. You are a song. You are a part of a melody across time,
Mm-hmm.
and your note is specific and it's unique, and the sound of your voice is known by your ancestors. So when you speak to them, out of the cloudiness, out of the confusion, out of everything that is happening right now,
Mm-hmm.
even out of the silence where you feel like you may not be heard, because you carry their blood, your voice, your song is known to your ancestors. So
Mm-hmm.
do not be confused that it's far from you, and it's unrealistic, it's unapproachable. You are
Mm-hmm.
marked by them. They know where you are. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's no way you can ever be separated from them, because at the end of your days you'll be gathered with them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I think we need to all take a moment and like sit with that for a second, and just kind of give thanks. Like,
Mm.
thank you for being here and sitting here with me and knowing my voice and
Yeah.
marking me in the first place because I was blessed to
Mm.
be marked.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I was going to take a second because we have about 10 minutes left, so I wanted to
Mm.
ask if anyone has any questions. Um,
Yes, that was
don't be
great.
afraid. Put the questions in the chat and we'll ask some questions. Someone said, thank you, Obi, happy from yeah, such a beautiful conversation. I'm really happy with this
Oh
conversation.
no, thank you.
Because yeah, it's always you never know when these conversations will go because there's so much
Yes,
to talk about,
that's
you
true.
know.
And you never know if people are gonna be receptive to this type of
Mhm,
teaching, because I've sat with
mhm,
it and it's been so familiar to me. And it's been difficult sometimes to find ways to articulate it into this world
mhm,
where
mhm,
it's so very rigid. And
mhm,
you don't understand just how chosen you are, and how you're a part of a longer history that
mhm,
was,
mhm,
you didn't just
mhm,
appear and you're nobody. No, you're somebody, and you're somebody to many people across
mhm,
time. so
mhm.
so i'm,
Oh,
I'm glad that you've been able to receive this.
yes, but I think it's also so important. You know, we were talking about the for us by us before, and how this conversation would not or might not have been possible without us both being here and present and kind of with our businesses being about black women in particular.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I think that
And the
it's so.
platforms that allow us to
Mhm, mhm.
even speak, that's why
Exactly, exactly.
it's
Mhm,
important to pass on what you know, because
mhm,
even at such a time like this, even in modernity, there are
mhm,
tools that you can use to
mhm.
get through to get this message across, to get
Yeah.
people to unite and reunite with themselves, because that's what it
Mm,
is. It's not a journey outwards, it's a journey back
mhm,
inwards, back to
mhm,
oneself, back to one's knowledge and wholeness of self.
mhm. Yeah, it's a quote. I'll go back to. I've gone back to it every single week. We've had these conversations, but self-care is collective care. That is the
Yes,
way to look after
yes, because when
everybody.
there's peace within, you can create
Mhm,
peace without.
mhm, mhm. Completely, completely.
Mm.
Um, yeah, there's
And
some.
a lot of these teachings are not they're not always in conflict with what they know. As I said, but
Mhm,
spirituality gets fragmented, and you
mhm,
compartmentalize it. It belongs
mhm,
here, it
mhm,
belongs in
mhm,
this
mhm,
space. You're not realizing that, sometimes spirituality is in just the choices that you make to in the food that you eat.
mhm,
Eating something that is alive, eating something that has been um taken care of. like, and surrounding yourself with things which have been created out of love. That's why I do love slow fashion, and because fast fashion there's no love in it. It's just
No love. No.
but you know, when there's consciousness and when there's a person on the other side of it, you will receive the nourishment, spiritual nourishment from that item.
Yes.
Like for example, there's a product which is one of a product like pipeline which I'm working on at the moment, which before you harvest it and before you enter the space where you harvest it, you must ask permission from an elder or a grandfather to enter that space to harvest. And an elder or grandfather may be a tall tree or grand tree that's nearby. So you must go to that tree and ask permission to enter the space to harvest it. And then as you harvest, you must make your claim that I'm harvesting this for this person for this purpose. And these things, there's a spiritual exchange that occurs because legend says that if you don't do that, when you give it to the person, it won't work. So it doesn't matter what you what you pick up, it just won't work because part of the healing is in the energy, is in the life force that you give to that person. And you know, even doctors to this day, scientists say, oh, placebo is the most fantastic, most free, accessible form of healing, and they don't understand why placebo works so well. There's an energy. There's an exchange of energy, and that is something which science does not yet have the tools to measure. And you know, I was talking about the difference between the truth and facts. We have many facts, and the difference between facts and the truth is that facts change. Like today, I'm a single woman. In a few years' time, I could be married. I can say one or two, but it's still facts. Right? But the truth is eternal because the truth never changes. On any day you say it, the truth is the same. And there are universal truths which we do not know yet. And when we get to those universal truths is when we have that eternal connection to what to that energy source. And if science was to reach there and was to get there and to prove what are the truths, you know, what is it that keeps the sun spinning around? What is it that keeps everything? Sorry, my mind is coming on. What is it that keeps us here? And the reasons why we're here, that is the truth. But at the moment, what we have is an abundance of facts. So never forget that there's a source that is the truth that may not be, you know, there's a source that is the truth that supersedes facts. Right now, we just have a collection of facts. And when the facts say that, oh, this is impossible, but somebody makes it possible the next generation. Did they lie? No, they didn't lie, but they didn't know the truth.
That's beautiful. I think that is like what we need is for, well, I don't think it's even what we need. I think that is what is required because we have been so immersed in kind of in scientific kind of empiricism, in kind of Western facts being the law of the land. Like that's what we're going to be required to do is figure out a way to rationalize spirituality, figure out a way to in a lab prove energy transfer, prove like energy being a vital part of living, which I think would make sense. And again, it's so interesting because you talk about Chinese or Indian or other cultures or other cultural ways of looking at kind of holistic health. And someone posted on, I think it was Twitter today, their book that they were learning in like a massage course. And it was about the energy. It was about energy zones. About energy.
Yeah, and so forth.
But yeah, and that's not pseudoscience when it comes to massage. Like it can be kind of capitalized off of. But it is when it comes through a different kind of form of understanding. It's so kind of interesting. Like searching for the truth rather than collecting facts is the way to go about it. Definitely.
100%. Yeah.
I'm going to ask one more question. I mean, I'm going to ask one more time. If anyone needs questions, anyone has any questions, I see you all want a podcast. Maybe you can definitely get a podcast because honestly, I'm so happy with the conversation. Got such good energy.
I'm trying to tell more stories. I'd love to. one of the things I'm discussing is a sort of a weekly storytelling. And it's
Yes.
just something that is just telling traditional stories. 'Cause I know some traditional stories from my culture, but Africa is a massive, massive continent, and with multiple tribes within each country. In fact, people have their own stories which they will tell. And the beauty of these stories is that they held a universal truth or a societal truth within it. And I want to do probably next week, I don't know yet, but I just went to tell a story, because there's a story which I really love, and it's called a story about where stories began. And it's just telling the narrative from a real African perspective. And it's one of the Zulu folk tales which are told to children. And just doing a series like that, you know,
I would love that.
it's
Oh
just
my
something
gosh.
to stimulate that conversation, and you have that story you can share with your child, story you can share with your relatives, with your friends, whomever. But yeah, we need to tell more stories.
Definitely. I mean, and I think we really forget that we come from oral traditions, and that is something that's suppressed, a skill that we've suppressed, but that it still remains. And like I said before, like there's so much that is shared within those stories. It's not just you know, the narrative. There's so much added to that, so much additional to that, and we lose that again with translation. We lose that again with kind of like even translating
somebody else interpreting
it
for us.
exactly. Or a Western publisher editing the story down into a book is, you know, changes things. And so that would be beautiful. That kind of space. I think that this COVID lockdown period has made us really kind of, or hopefully, made us rethink a lot about communion and family and what it means to share space together, and the importance of staying connected.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's super important. Someone's asked what books to use. There's like loads. There's loads. And this is what made my discernment, because some of them I find quite problematic. So some of them reference things about gender, things about sexuality that I don't agree with. And in fact, I'm not even going to talk about that book, because there's no point. But so this book I have is called The Poetic Diet. Ancient African Wisdom for Health of Mind, Body and Spirit. This one I'm not going to talk about because I don't agree with it. But this is Women Healers of the World. I'll put a post up in my stories. Actually, I'll just put a post in my stories because we're running out of time. I want to hear more from you.
From me, what books people can read. It's really difficult because, you know, my education doesn't come from books. And that's why because it's important to know the author who's telling and the authority who's telling these stories, right? And for me, it's speaking to family, it's speaking to my cousins, elders, speaking to all manner of relatives that I can to understand many things, because whilst they are alive, capture this knowledge, capture this wisdom that they have, which they carry with them, which you can be the beneficiary of. And if you do not have because my concern for especially migrants into Europe and immigrants right now is being completely cut off to the point where you're cultureless. And you know, I see what that did by force to African Americans, and the erasure of culture and the consequences thereof. That it would be important for those who move out of Africa to maintain a connection, because without that connection, you become a wanderer, and that is dangerous, because who knows what then you will become, right? So it's going back, even in, don't do volunteerism, but do tourism, right? You can go visit home, because volunteerism is one problematic nature. But, you know, go start, you know, all of these travel plans. I love seeing these travel IGs, which are online, which are promoting different places in Africa for you to travel.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go with the humility to learn, because these people have been there. This is their land. They know it better than nobody else. And if you ask them questions, they will tell you.
Yeah.
There's many European women who started a company because she went to Ghana and asked the right questions, right? So,
I think definitely asking questions.
They just ask the right questions. They're like, oh my gosh, wow. And they start these cooperatives and they create these amazing businesses, some of which, I'm working with. But how do they do that? Because they went there and they didn't have any connection to Africa, but they went with a curiosity and a humility to learn, and were able to build trust of community members, so much so that they'll give up their own secrets, so
we won't talk about that today.
But I'm a big learner from other people, because even whether you agree or not, whether it's a good thing or not, it absolutely has no importance. What is important is that it works. So learn what works and emulate it. So you are more than welcome to visit. There's so many countries that you can visit who need that tourism money, and who need people who are connected to that land to work with them in order to develop the culture, the community, to maintain and to capture the culture as well, because there's so much that isn't really done by the people who are in that situation. Poverty doesn't make you want to do many adventurous and creative things, and you may not see past that because you've always lived a certain way of life. But I do believe that is the privilege that we have as diasporans, that we can go back with our modern technology, with our modern thinking, our education, and bridge the gap between us and them through collaborative working.
I think we have to, the first step of that, going back though with our Western education and technology and whatever is sitting at the feet of the elders. I think that's a step that most people miss, is that they go and they think that they know better, when actually you have a different approach. You learn a different approach, but the wisdom is they still have. The wisdom you still have to learn. I think people forget that when they kind of return, and because they haven't unlearned the superiority,
the Western way of things. It's difficult, and there's a conflict there. But one thing you need to learn is that this has sustained them for centuries, and you're being given the keys to being able to sustain what is going to be yours for centuries. Because living outside of Africa, where do you think we'll be in 100 years, 200 years time? Who knows? But the key to, I think we'll probably be completely erased, to be honest.
On the last 2 minutes, you want to say that?
Just be erased, because we'll be so was being so indoctrinated. Even China does not allow Western movies to be playing in their country. Russia does not allow it. Why? Because they understand the preservation of culture requires to protect the knowledge, to protect the minds and the exposure of people, and to ensure that your culture is first. In a room of people, you should be able to choose yourself first. And that love for your own culture is what's going to carry through the generations. But it is, yes, go back with humility and get the keys to centuries of knowledge that is being passed down to you. And it's a privilege to be the vessel that carries this knowledge forward in time.
Yes. So there's 20 seconds left. I want to thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a beautiful conversation. I think everybody has found it super refreshing and necessary. So the word story like 10,000 times today, but this conversation was healing for me, and thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
And you can find everything on a complexion company. I'll write everything in my story.